Dead Zone by Rich von Holt. The security guard's keys jangled against his thigh as he strode through the stark, narrow halls of the prison. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a pallid glow. He reached the end of the corridor and turned to face door 403. With a metallic clank, he inserted the key into the lock and turned it. Inside the solitude cell, the prisoner squinted against the sudden influx of light from the hallway. Tightly bound to a chair, he wore a garish orange jumpsuit and a black skull cap pulled low over his brow. Fury etched hard lines into his face. Avigillo entered first, a hulking mountain of a man, 6 feet tall and 250 pounds of coiled muscle. He crossed his brawny arms and took up position along the wall, a menacing sentinel. The warden followed close behind, his polished dress shoes clicking against the concrete. Clean-shaven head gleaming, beard neatly trimmed, he cut an authoritative figure in his crisp suit and tie. He adjusted his cuffs as he appraised the prisoner. "I see you're enjoying your stay," the warden said in Spanish, a mocking lilt to his voice. The prisoner glowered at him, seething with barely contained rage. "Do you know Avigillo?" The warden gestured to the imposing guard. Avigillo flexed, corded muscles rippling beneath his uniform. The prisoner shot him a look of pure venom. The warden's lips curled into a smirk. "Well, I think it's time you two met." Avigillo's fist cracked across the prisoner's jaw like a thunderclap. The metallic tang of blood filled the prisoner's mouth. He spat, crimson speckling the floor. The warden's laughter echoed off the bare walls. "There's an opportunity to get out of this dead box," the warden said. "Oh yeah?" The prisoner tongued the ragged hole where a tooth had been. "What opportunity?" "At this prison, we have blood games. We can have a blood game right now." The prisoner strained against his bonds. "Untie me." His baleful gaze bored into Avigillo, a silent challenge. The warden continued as if he hadn't spoken. "The sun has never been more yellow, the sky more blue, and the grass. Oh, the grass." He paused, letting the words hang. "You can't tell me you wouldn't love to feel the breeze out there. I know your wife is enjoying it." The prisoner's hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. "What do I have to do?" A predatory grin split the warden's face. "It's simple. Don't get hit." He turned to leave. "In the meantime, get cleaned up." As the warden exited, Avigillo's cold stare lingered on the prisoner, a promise of pain to come. The door clanged shut with a resounding finality, leaving the prisoner alone with the weight of his rage and the tantalizing promise of freedom, no matter how slim. The prisoner stood before the bathroom sink, staring into the mirror's cracked surface. He yanked off his skull cap, revealing a tapestry of mottled bruises. Gingerly, he probed the swollen flesh, wincing as his fingers brushed the cut on his lower lip. Copper bloomed across his tongue. A tooth wobbled in its socket, a casualty of Avigillo's brutality. The prisoner gripped it between thumb and forefinger, gave a sharp twist. It came free with a sickening pop. He spat, the tooth clattering into the sink, a lone ivory pebble awash in a sea of crimson. Unzipping his jumpsuit, the prisoner shrugged it off his shoulders, the coarse fabric pooling around his waist. He snatched up the electric hair trimmer, its buzz echoing off the tile walls. In swift, efficient strokes, he mowed down the stubble covering his scalp, erasing any trace of vulnerability. Dark clumps of hair drifted to the floor like fallen leaves. He stepped into the shower, the spray needling his skin, steam billowing in thick clouds. Rivulets of water snaked down the planes of his body, mingling with the dried blood and sweat, a baptism of sorts. The prisoner scrubbed his face raw, scouring away the evidence of his beating, watching it swirl down the drain in a rusty whirlpool. The pain had etched itself deep into his bones, a constant throb that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. But it was nothing compared to the agony of confinement, the suffocating walls of his cell closing in until he could scarcely breathe. He had to get out by any means necessary. even if it meant spilling blood in the warden's twisted games. He reached for the tattered remnants of his jumpsuit, shaking loose the stray clippings that clung to his shoulders. The prisoner dragged a hand across his newly shorn scalp, the bristles prickling against his palm. He was ready, a warrior preparing for battle, and he would not rest until he tasted the sweet nectar of freedom once more, no matter the cost. In the inky darkness of the room, the prisoner donned his black attire, a shadow preparing for battle. He strapped on armor pads, encasing his legs and forearms in unyielding protection. His boots, tightened with fierce determination, anchored him to the ground. The vest, a second skin, hugged his torso as he slipped it on. Gloves encased his hands, while a headless mask obscured his features, rendering him a faceless weapon. The prisoner stood in the shed, a lone figure amidst the chaos of the battlegrounds. He hunched over his rifle, fingers deftly adjusting the weapon with practiced precision. His gaze, sharp as a hawk's, fixated on the shed door, a portal to the hell that awaited him. Gunshots cracked through the air like whips, distant yet all too close. Anguished cries, pleas for mercy, assaulted the prisoner's ears, twisting his gut into knots. Steeling himself, he tucked his chin to his chest, squared his shoulders, and charged. The door splintered as he burst through, shards of wood exploding outward. He sprinted across the obstacle course, a gauntlet of death and destruction. Hay bales loomed before him, makeshift barriers in a twisted game. The prisoner ducked and wove, his movements fluid yet urgent. A metal cylinder, rusted and foreboding, appeared in his path. Without hesitation, he launched himself over it, his body a coiled spring. The staccato rhythm of gunfire never ceased, a sinister soundtrack to the unfolding carnage. The prisoner risked a glance over the rim of the cylinder, his eyes widening at the sight that greeted him. Fellow prisoners, their bodies ravaged by bullets, littered the course. Crimson mist hung in the air, a macabre fog born of spilled blood. In the warden's office, a wall of monitors cast an eerie glow. The warden leaned forward, his eyes glued to the screens, drinking in every moment of the blood-soaked spectacle. His gaze lingered on the prisoner, a spark of twisted fascination igniting in his eyes. Amidst the chaos, the prisoner tore off his mask, his face slick with sweat and grime. With trembling fingers, he reached into his vest, extracting a worn photograph. His wife's image stared back at him, a talisman against the madness. Memory slammed into him, a brief respite from the nightmare. He saw himself and his wife, lost in a moment of carefree joy, their laughter ringing out as the merry-go-round spun beneath them. They clung to each other, a lifeline in a world untainted by the horrors he now faced. The prisoner's reverie shattered as a scream pierced the air, yanking him back to the present. He dropped to the ground, his body coiled and ready. With deft movements, he checked his rifle, ensuring it was primed for the task at hand. He brought the weapon to his shoulder, sighting down the barrel. His finger caressed the trigger. The rifle bucked against his shoulder as he squeezed, the bullet finding its mark with deadly accuracy. The prisoner surged to his feet, darting across the blood-soaked field. He fired again and again, each shot a defiant roar against the cruelty that surrounded him. In that moment, he was no longer a man, but an instrument of survival, a force of nature unleashed upon the battlegrounds. The warden's jaw clenched, teeth grinding in a snarl of frustration as he watched the prisoner's rampage unfold on the monitors. With a vicious jab, he stabbed a button on the console. "Avigillo, take him out," he growled, his voice sharp as a razor's edge. Avigillo's hand flew to his ear, pressing the earpiece deeper into his skull. He snatched up his gun, ramming a clip into the chamber with brutal efficiency. The door to the exit area slammed open as he charged out, a force of nature unleashed. On the battlegrounds, the prisoner unleashed a hail of bullets, his rifle spitting lead in a staccato rhythm. He sprinted through the course, a blur of motion amidst the carnage. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the distance. Avigillo, a colossus of sinew and fury. The two men froze, locked in a momentary stalemate. The prisoner raised his rifle, finger caressing the trigger. Click, empty. With a snarl, he hurled the useless weapon to the ground. Avigillo mirrored the gesture, discarding his own gun. Fists clenched, knuckles white, they charged at each other like raging bulls. Avigillo seized the prisoner, slamming him to the earth with bone-jarring force. Straddling his prone form, Avigillo rained down blows, his fists connecting with the prisoner's face in a savage rhythm. The prisoner's arm shot up, blocking the third punch. His fist slammed into Avigillo's throat, a precise strike that sent the giant reeling. Staggering to his feet, the prisoner waited, poised for the next onslaught. Avigillo surged forward, only to be met with an elbow to the gut and an uppercut that snapped his head back. The prisoner followed with a vicious left hook, the impact reverberating through Avigillo's skull. They traded blows in a brutal dance, fists connecting with flesh in a symphony of violence. Avigillo caught the prisoner's arm, wrenching it behind his back. The prisoner retaliated, smashing his forehead into Avigillo's face, a sickening crunch of cartilage and bone. The prisoner unleashed a flurry of punches, his fists a blur as they pummeled Avigillo's face and chest. Avigillo staggered, his defenses crumbling under the onslaught. With a final devastating kick, the prisoner sent Avigillo crashing to the ground, a broken heap of flesh and shattered pride. The prisoner surveyed the battlefield, his chest heaving, blood trickling from a myriad of cuts and bruises. Around him, the fallen lay strewn like discarded dolls, their lives snuffed out in the warden's twisted game. Clutching his side, the prisoner limped away, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold. At the prison gates, the prisoner emerged, a different man than the one who had entered. Gone was the orange jumpsuit, replaced by a crisp white dress shirt and dark jeans. A black jacket hugged his frame, a symbol of his hard-won freedom. He hefted a black duffel bag, the weight of his past balanced against the promise of his future. Beyond the gates, a figure waited, his wife, her face etched with a mixture of hope and disbelief. As the gates creaked open, she raced towards him, her feet barely touching the ground. The prisoner dropped his bag, catching her in his arms and spinning her in a circle, their laughter mingling with the sound of the wind. He held her close, burying his face in her hair, breathing in the scent of home and love and everything he had fought so hard to reclaim. As they embraced, the prisoner tilted his face towards the sun, its warmth a balm to his battered soul. The nightmare was over. He was free.